Welcome to Brain Wellness, the podcast. I'm your host, Mandy NP. Each episode will bring you a new topic or interview related to brain health and wellness as part of my mission to help you on the path to a healthier, happier brain. So, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Brain Wellness, the podcast. My guest today is Jamie Nicole. Jamie is a certified AIP coach and autoimmune health strategist with a passion for empowering individuals to take control of their health and well-being. With extensive knowledge of the autoimmune protocol, AIP, and its transformative benefits, Jamie helps clients navigate their unique health journeys by implementing personalized dietary and lifestyle changes that reduce inflammation and promote healing. Drawing on her own experiences, she provides practical strategies that enhance cognitive clarity, support mental wellness, and improve physical health through nutrition and holistic approaches. Jamie is committed to creating a supportive community where clients feel understood and motivated to achieve their health goals. Thank you so much for being here today, Jamie.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. As I said before we started recording, I'm excited to talk about this because I have known about AIP for years and practiced it myself. So this is going to be a really good conversation today. But my first question before we get to that is always a little bit of a backstory. I'd like to know where you came from. How did you get to where you are today?
By matter of chance, medicine was not something that I set out to do. I actually went to school for business. I have my master's in accounting, but when I was doing my job, I knew that it was not a passion of mine, and was looking for something else. And it just so happens that, I had a high stress job. I had come off of, getting my master's. That was high stress. I was married, divorced, had kids, and I was just getting back to me. And all I was trying to do was lose a little weight. And so I was following someone online. I was doing all the things that I was supposed to do, or so I thought. My calories in were less than my calories out, and I was working out all the time. And it didn't matter if I drank a green smoothie or ate a donut. Nothing was coming off. And so someone that I was following online said if that is happening, that you need to go to the doctor. And check out a couple of things, your hormones, and your liver. And so me being the type A personality that I am, did all of the research and, went into the office with my binder and found a doctor that was about an hour away, that specialized in hormones, because I had heard horror stories of people trying to get a diagnosis. And so on my first visit, even though I was presenting with the symptoms of PCOS, I ended up being diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is an autoimmune disease that impacts my thyroid. And so even though she was a good doctor, she did not tell me any holistic remedies. She did give me a prescription for a natural hormone therapy. But I did some research on my own because I wanted to make sure that I was, again, type A, addressing everything that I needed to address lifestyle wise. And I see that you have glasses. I have glasses. I always liken it to the first time that you get a pair of glasses. Like, I knew I couldn't see, but I didn't know how blind I was. I knew I was having symptoms before, and I had, other medical concerns, but I didn't know how bad I was until I got better. And so at that point, I was like, I've been in hell for about 20 something years. Didn't even know that I wasn't working to my full potential because of the limitations that were on my body, whether it be from disrupted sleep, fatigue, brain fog. I thought that those things were how I was supposed to feel, because I was always a busy person and had a lot of things going on in my life. And so that was 2015. I was like, well, I feel good. Do other people know? If I didn't know, do other people know that, you need to go get these things tested? So I ended up going to get my health coaching certification. Um, in the process of that, it took me a little while because I saw people were having issues. So went and did a business class first, and then went back and got my health coaching certification. And that's how all of this started, is just for me having that particular experience and not knowing that in retrospect that I had been living a suboptimal life all of those years, just assuming because I was a woman who was always busy that I was supposed to feel like crap. And that couldn't have been farther from the truth. So ever since that time, I've just become more passionate about it. Subsequently, again, type A personality when we're supposed to be on quarantine and when I'm still working my full-time job. I ended up in 2020 doing the AIP certified coach certification. And so, again, wanted to learn more about autoimmune disease, the proper lifestyle protocols that I needed to take. And let me back up a little bit because I was mentioning earlier before I got the certification, I got diagnosed with another chronic illness in 2019, narcolepsy type 2. Got my AIP certification in 2020, and I am so glad that I did. And I'm so glad that I was able to learn even more about specifically about autoimmune disease. Because had I not, something that I didn't mention earlier is that in last year, 2023, I forget what year it is because so much going on this year. This this last year, I had certain symptoms of different autoimmune diseases, and we were talking earlier about how some of the symptoms can overlap. So I was presenting with the symptoms of lupus that I recognized because of the AIP certification and doing more investigation. And long story short, having issues with my joints, as you normally do with autoimmune disease. Went to the doctor who diagnosed me with the Hashimoto's and told her what test I wanted. I still that type A personality. I need all the rheumatological tests. And so when she first tested me, I ended up being positive for mixed connective tissue disorder. And my rheumatoid arthritis labs were normal. Antibodies were normal. And then so she referred me to a rheumatologist. They did more tests, sent them off to, I think, California and to do a deeper dive. And it came back negative for mixed connective tissue disorder and positive for rheumatoid arthritis. And so in addition to the rash, another symptom that kind of led me to want to do the follow-up was because I had symmetrical injuries. So I ended up having surgery last year as well. In between my rheumatoid arthritis diagnosis, my rotator cuff. So had my surgery on my left rotator cuff in August of last year, and my right rotator cuff, not even a year. It'll be a year on the 14th. And so it's been a long journey. But again, I'm so glad that even though it's chronic, I do have tools, I do have information to kind of mitigate some of the impact of all of the different issues, the plethora of issues that I do have.
Yeah, that is a lot. And
Mhm,
when I say that, though, it doesn't surprise me that you got more than one autoimmune diagnosis, because
mhm,
once you get one autoimmune diagnosis, you are at a higher risk of getting
mhm,
another autoimmune diagnosis.
mhm. And it's wild. Me going through this process, being a health coach, but actually going through it myself,
Mhm.
and seeing some of the feedback in groups I see online. Like I don't go in there and give my advice because I don't want to stay away from that. But I do recognize if I had not fought for myself, I could have thought just because Hashimoto's also comes along with joint issues that that's what it was. But I knew that there had to be something else, especially with the narcolepsy, because the brain fog comes along with autoimmune disease as well.
Mhm.
But I was like, look, lady, this is something a little different. Like I know brain fog. And then my antibodies for my Hashimoto's, I caught it early, so they weren't, off of the charts.
Mhm.
But as I aged, that's another thing too. Got a little older, it became more difficult to manage. To the point where I'm like, look, when you start calling you don't call the doctor anymore. I'm like, look, lady,
When you start being older than the
got there,
doctor,
and I felt
basically.
comfortable talking to her like that because she did listen. She had a check sheet, and she didn't just go off of labs. But we went through an iteration. It was 4 years from my Hashimoto's diagnosis, and I had gone through an Epstein-Barr flare. At the time, I'm just getting into my health coaching, didn't know that it was like shingles where it stays in your system and you can have a flare. So I went through that. I went through an issue with Epstein-Barr. So by the time we got to, that 4 years later, I'm 4 years older. I'm like, look, I've been through all of this already. I was, again, married, divorced in college, 2 kids, working full time, unmedicated. I know what tired is. This is beyond that. And so many people with autoimmune disease out there think they have that one. autoimmune disease. And if they don't address what could be the primary autoimmune disease, they may not feel any relief. So that's one, I guess, tip or advice that I do have. The doctors may not know. It may take a while, but it's so important for us to advocate for ourselves on an ongoing basis. Make sure that we're journaling our symptoms and we're recognizing what they are. Again, at the beginning of the year last year, had this never had it before rash on my face, the butterfly rash that normally comes with lupus, so bad that I could not go out in the sun. I could not wash my face with soap. I had to use like either coconut oil or olive oil. Everything stung. So that in conjunction with some other things that were going on, had I not known that, had I not been paying attention to my body, I never would have known to go to the doctor and say, these are what my symptoms have been. This is what I think I need to test for. This is my family history. And this is why the information you need to justify that with the insurance. So they'll pay for these tests that I need. I know what you're looking for. As far as ordering those labs, so I've checked off all the boxes. So give me my tests.
Yeah, yeah. That advocating for yourself is so huge. So
Mhm.
knowing all of those things is fantastic. You do need all of that information, your symptoms, what you've been experiencing. That family history is huge. A lot of people, it's autoimmune disease is genetic in the sense that if your parents had it, you're more likely to have it. It doesn't mean you're more likely to have the same one that they had. It just
Exactly.
means that you're more likely to have an autoimmune disease. And
Hmm.
then, like I mentioned, if you have one, you're at higher risk of having another.
Definitely.
Like we were talking before I hit record, I was diagnosed with my first autoimmune disease in 2019 with Sjogren's disease. That was the only thing that they could diagnose.
Hmm.
My rheumatologist at the time said, "Yeah, there's probably more. There's just not a test for it at this time because my symptoms didn't fall into the nice little category of just Sjogren's."
Hmm.
Since then, we identified celiac, and there have been other things that just didn't fall into a category either. But definitely once you have one, you can have others. And it's so common for people to have that. Um, when you had your different diagnoses come on, did you have any stressful events come up beforehand?
Um, I would say yes. And it's interesting that you asked that question because I was just speaking with someone yesterday and then last week on adverse childhood events. So again, even though I'm an AIP coach, even though I've been diagnosed with multiple chronic illnesses, a couple autoimmune diseases, I'm always learning. So to answer your question, yeah. But I'll start from early on in life, and then I'll go back to some things that I've learned even this past week about, I always say I think my symptoms went back to high school, but after talking to some other people, I'm like, well, I think they may have started in elementary when I was having those nightmares. There were different things going on in my life. Um, so as I mentioned, starting back in high school after my diagnosis, I went back. Always type A personality, always doing something, which I think may have been a trauma response, but I'll come back to that. So I was, graduated number 5 in my class. I was president of Honor Society and Student Council at the same time. I was in all of the AIP, maybe not AIP, the AP classes, the dual credit classes, played sports and was on all the clubs because that's what we were told we needed to do in order to make our college application look good, right? So that was high stress in and of itself, and also one of the reasons why I thought that I was always supposed to be tired. That was the life that I had been living for so many years, staying up late, getting up early, and doing all the things. So it was just commonplace for me. And then moving to college, God, I was able to get a full scholarship to college, but uh, again, got married, divorced, 2 kids, and still was working full time with employees. Still again, type A personality. I was getting my job done. Went from clerk to supervising the entire department while I was still in school. And ended up getting my master's because I had taken all these AP classes, dual credit classes in high school. They asked me what my major, what I wanted to focus on. I was in the business school, and I just chose the first one, Mandy. It was accounting. It was like, I don't know. I just got here. I have too many credits. I don't even know. But then they had a dual program where you get your bachelor's and your master's at the same time. I'm like, well, I'm here. Why not? So the added stress of that, right? And now, mind you, I said that I had the initial diagnosis of the Hashimoto's 35 years old, 2015, 2019, narcolepsy type 2. Looking back, I had all of those symptoms back then. The core symptoms of narcolepsy, excessive daytime sleepiness, insomnia, sleep paralysis, all of that started in high school. So when you talk about a triggering event, not only did I have a lot going on, a lot on my plate, I also got mono in the ninth grade, Epstein-Barr virus. So after making all of those connections, again, digging deeper after I got my initial diagnosis, there was a lot going on in high school, a lot going on in college. Then, Mandy, guess what I did after I graduated? Didn't mention this earlier. My job was an internal revenue agent for large and mid-sized business. So not individuals, not small business, for the corporations who our office wasn't at the federal building, it was at their office. The taxpayers who call their congresspeople whenever we do something wrong. And even there, when I got there, still type A personality. And let me just go back, unmedicated. This is the other thing, because I have a less severe form of narcolepsy, unlike the people who have type 1 with the cataplexy, where you commonly see that where they just, fall asleep. I don't do that. That's the only distinction between type 1 and type 2. Had I had that, I probably would have gotten diagnosed earlier. I went through all of this unmedicated. In college, after the baby, I'm sitting there listening. Is anybody understanding? Am I the only one not understanding what's going on? And then that translated again as I got older into my job. So now I have the same mindset, type A. I'm trying to excel. I'm trying to move the corporate ladder. But as I get older, I'm stressed out because I hear you, but I don't understand what you're saying, Mr. Taxpayer. I'm in the office with my employees sometimes with the brain fog, not just from the autoimmune disease, from the narcolepsy. And I'm like, okay. But because I was undiagnosed, right? I had, even after the Hashimoto's diagnosis, how do you tell your employer that you're just tired? Because if you don't have a chronic illness, especially one that impacts your brain, that impacts your alertness, that causes brain fog, everybody is going to say the same thing. You just need to get more rest. But it didn't matter how much sleep I got. It was as though I had been awake for 72 hours when I woke up first thing in the morning. And me, again, type A personality, to answer your question, talk about stress. I thought once I just figure out what it is, once I just advocate for myself, because I'm still going to the doctor, Epstein-Barr flare, fibroids, I'm trying to figure out what it is and not let my employer know that I couldn't do my job at the same way that I did before, that caused me to be able to get a promotion. I had made it all the way to supervisor. Right. And it's just like when I got there, I had to drive to different sites across the city with my employees with narcolepsy, undiagnosed and unmedicated. Stressful. Right. I had to meet with these corporate, taxpayers. I'm here in Houston. So you think oil and gas, that's who we're meeting with. I can't fall asleep on site. So I ended up having to step down from management because of that, because I just couldn't physically, it was a danger for me. And even after diagnosis, it was a hard time finding a medication that worked for the narcolepsy for me. So that was even more stress, but also the stress of working that hard all of your life, doing the things that you are told that you need to do in order to be successful and live the American dream. Sacrificing so much to be told that because of something that is out of your control, that you're not going to be able to fulfill the dream that you once thought you would be able to accomplish, just by working hard and doing what you're told that you're supposed to do. So yes, to answer your question, throughout my life, there has been significant amounts of stress that are exacerbated. And I think even now with doing certain things, as I get older, as my body changes, the level of tolerance for stress that may cause a trigger. So adjusting my mindset with that. Before I got diagnosed with the rheumatoid arthritis. I had just come off an event because this is my nonprofit shirt. In addition to being a health coach, I started a nonprofit to help the underserved community with autoimmune disease because I was like, I know is impacting a lot more people that I can reach, and I felt as though I can do it. As soon as I came off of a big event, that's when I started having those flares. So I
Mm.
know now that I'm cognizant of it because I'm more aware of my body, of how to better manage it. Because stress is not going to go away.
Yep.
It's about learning the tools, learning your body, number one, and then two, having those tools in place already, so you can mitigate and minimize the impact that it has. So your flares aren't as long or they aren't as intense.
Yeah.
So yes, to answer your question, and I won't even, I'm not going to even go back to childhood like I said I would, but I do think that some of the things with my parents divorcing when I was 4 years old, childhood bullying, me even expressing some of that in my sleep, like I wouldn't stand up. I just came from a sleep conference, and someone said that her daughter had symptoms, and it was a shift in her weight and her stress levels, and I would fight my bullies in my sleep because I didn't stand up to them when I was awake.
Mhm.
And so I started having those narcoleptic type dreams, those lucid, vivid dreams, even back then.
Mhm.
So yes, stress is a big trigger in player for autoimmune disease that I
Mhm.
think, and just as much as diet, people need to be aware of.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So that's exactly why I was asking it because
Mhm.
it can absolutely trigger autoimmune disease. It can trigger flares of autoimmune disease.
Mhm.
So you mentioned the word control and that's a great segue, I think, into one thing that we can control is how we can mitigate those symptoms, how we can mitigate those flares. And
Mhm.
one of those ways is through AIP. So
Mhm.
can you kind of briefly tell the listeners what is AIP and
Mhm.
how can it actually help to mitigate some of those symptoms of autoimmune issues?
Yes, of course. And so basically what AIP is, it's we call it a diet, but I really don't like to call it a diet at all because that's not what it's supposed to be used for long term. It's a targeted dietary intervention designed to reduce inflammation and promote healing by finding what those individual food triggers are for you. Some of the most common ones being like gluten, dairy, grains. There's a list of them. The difficulty is it's different for everybody, and everyone has different triggers. But not only that, the importance of adding back in nutrient dense foods, which I think a lot of people oftentimes miss. On the autoimmune protocol, it's an elimination period where you eliminate those pro-inflammatory foods. um, Normally it's 3 days. It could be longer depending on what your symptoms are. The goal is to mitigate your symptoms to where you're at a state where you're not having a flare, quote unquote, and then gradually reintroduce the foods in so you can see which foods are a trigger for you. But at the same time, also adding back in those nutrient dense foods. So, the grass-fed meats, the vegetables, the healthy fats, avocados, oils, gut healing foods like bone broth. So it's, again, we call it an AIP diet, but it's not supposed to be long term because some of those pro-inflammatory foods are healthy foods for you if they don't cause a reaction. And so what we've been seeing too is a lot of times people feel so good that they just do the elimination diet, right? And they don't do any reintroductions, but not understanding that a lack of nutrient density can also cause you to have health issues. So we want you to add back in those foods that are healthy for you and don't cause are not a trigger for you and don't cause flares, but eliminate the ones that cause you issues and cause you to flare up. So in short, that's what the AIP diet is. But also too, along with the elimination of the trigger foods, along with the adding in the nutrient dense foods, you also have to focus on those other pillars, one of which we've talked about already, which is stress. So, in addition to the gut, in addition to diet, we focus on stress mitigation, stress management, sleep, which is very important, and also movement, safe movement on a bell curve. Because again, that is different for everybody. I know some people who I'm a fitness instructor as well. I've been teaching for a long period of time. I've been able to do um, 5Ks, 10Ks, gradually worked my way up. But I also see some people here in Houston who do those marathons with rheumatoid arthritis, and that's not my ministry, Manji. I don't think that that's that's the way to be me. And understanding too that that can change over time. The things that I was able to do, I would be able to get up 6 a.m., 5 a.m., go run, go to another class called Bounce Fit, and then go to the gym. After my surgery, I can't do that anymore. And it's been almost a year, and I was bragging after the surgery. I'm about to do 2 a days, and get back to my regular routine. And I have found that quickly found out that my body was like, no, ma'am. I don't know. And it could be a number of different things. It could just be me getting older, which, I don't think it's that. My body not recovering like it should because I had, the shoulder surgeries last year back to back, all of the anesthesia, the things that my body wasn't used to, the medications, because I try, I do take medication, but I try to live as holistically as possible. And if I don't need it, I don't take it. And so my body probably went into shock. But even teaching one class or doing one run now, my bell curve has shifted. So that, along with the mindset piece of understanding, even if I find out what's wrong right now, even if I find my food trigger, even if I find where I am on the bell curve, that may shift. Mindset and understanding that is also a critical piece. It's not on our official, pillars, but it is so important because you have to learn to listen to your body and adjust. And optimal may look different for you at different stages of your life.
Yeah, I think I mentioned I've done the AIP a few times over
Mhm,
the last several years since getting my first diagnosis. And there
mhm,
was a time that I was more inflamed than others, and I went through a 3-month period that I couldn't eat nightshades at all. And I love fajitas.
mhm,
Oh, I love fajitas. There were no fajitas in my future because nightshades, peppers, onions, couldn't do them. 3 months, couldn't do them.
mhm,
And then all of a sudden things calmed down in my body and I could do it again.
mhm. Yeah, and
And
I tell people that all the time when they especially when they want to do a strict AIP diet. For me, it's about balance, right? And so, for example, the fajitas, I didn't realize it before, but I know now if it's Thanksgiving and my grandmother only cooks like that once a year. Now I know I might need to take Friday, Saturday, and
recover,
Sunday off
recover after. Yeah.
to do some extra, bone broths and let my system rest and some detoxes, sauna, a little red light therapy, all of the above,
Mhm.
cryotherapy, anything that I can. But I'm not going to cause more stress on myself by saying that I have to eliminate something that is important for me, not only just because it's the holiday, but culturally, I don't cook like that every day. That's a part of gathering with family. But again, as I mentioned earlier, I have the tools in place to mitigate that flare. But sometimes it's risk versus rewards. Like, oh, it's a possibility. But my grandma's cooking is worth it.
Yeah, there you
And
go.
but and also too, again, like you mentioned, before I knew about AIP, you can say my inflammation, it said this is the bottom, this is the top, my inflammation's up here. I don't have much room. If I'm down here and I eat a meal that causes me a little inflammation, I'm still down, I'm okay.
Yeah.
I can still function. So it's about learning what your body is, where your body is, getting that foundation and learning to listen to it, and then you can have those splurges without, thinking that you're going to ruin your life if you have something that you're not supposed to have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
So the other thing you kind of mentioned here too several times is the brain fog. So how does, and then we talked about the inflammation. How does the inflammation that comes along with some of these autoimmune diseases, how does that relate back to our brain health and our brain function, like maybe with that brain fog?
Yeah. Um, And it's so interesting how much you learn when you're going on this journey and how everything is connected. And so when your immune system is chronically activated, your body releases these pro-inflammatory molecules called cytokines. And I won't get too technical, which is important, which is why it's important that we sleep because a lot of these anti-inflammatory processes that go on in our body happen when we sleep. And so these cytokines can cross the blood-brain barrier and trigger what we call neural inflammation, which is inflammation in the brain. And so this disruption and this barrier often leads to the brain fog, the difficulty concentrating, memory issues, mood disorders, and then cognitive decline over time. So I mentioned earlier the thing over time, right? And again, also to your lifestyle. So if I'm type A personality, I'm always on the go. Not only do I have that high stress, I also have lack of sleep because I'm trying to always grind all the time. So our bodies aren't able to do those processes at night to where we're detoxing the brain. We're reducing inflammation because inflammation, acute inflammation, is good for you. But if you allow it to become chronic over time, again, that's just going to cause more issues with your gut, more issues with your brain, and it again, all of it is connected. So again, one of the pillars of sleep is equally as important as your diet. And so we often have seen people say, oh, the autoimmune protocol isn't working. I've eliminated the foods, I've reintroduced them. I know what my particular triggers are, I've eliminated them. I'm still having issues. Well, what other things have you addressed in addition to your diet? Have you addressed your sleep? Is your body able to recover at night? A lot of the functioning of our gut and our brain again happens when we sleep. The detoxing of our brain, the functioning of our hormones, all of that coincides. So making sure that you're taking care of all aspects of your life holistically is very important to managing autoimmune disease.
Yeah, yeah. So when we're talking about the diet part specifically, or maybe any of it, what are some challenges that might people might face when trying to follow the different pillars and whatever in AIP?
Number one, time and energy.
Yeah.
A lot of people, because of the type of foods that it does eliminate, there are staples to our diet. When you talk about gluten, when you talk about grains, when you talk about dairy, in the standard American diet, that's most of what we have in the morning. The cereals, the muffins, the pancakes. So people oftentimes have problems finding the top foods or meals is breakfast. A lot of people have issues with meal planning, finding foods that they can eat. You mentioned the fajitas earlier. What do we mostly cook with? The peppers and the onions. I had a client once that her relief was going to eat Mexican food on the weekends, right? So if that's your stress relief, and you have to eliminate alcohol, tomatoes, nightshades, all of the above, it could be stressful if you don't balance that out. However, it can be more stressful if you're going at it alone. It can also be stressful, just me personally, if you don't have the right guidance. A lot of times in the groups, people will think that one thing is supposed to work for everybody, and you'll get into certain groups. For example, I saw the other day, I'm trying to eliminate coffee. Do you have any recommendations? And someone else is shaming them, like, I never had any issues with coffee. Well, that may be, if you're not aware of it, it can become, the information overload can become stressful. So having the right information, the right guidance is important. Also, how you transition, depending on your personality. You might want to go cold turkey, where you do the all of the eliminations up front and gradually add those back in. Or you might want to do a gradual transition, which is helpful if you're the type of person where I've been on the standard American diet. I've never dieted before. I didn't know I had these issues. Now all of a sudden you're telling me to take out all of these foods, which I thought was healthy. I remember when I first started, I was like, well, heck, what can I eat? Provide me with some information on what I can eat. So doing the gradual transition of the primary inflammatory foods, but also focusing on nutrient density can help with that transition process if you find it to be stressful. And even now, I think within the past year that they've come out with a new modified AIP, which some people have found as helpful, which is more flexible, focuses on your individual needs. Start off by eliminating again gluten, which is the primary one that is inflammatory, and dairy, while gradually incorporating those gut healing foods. Because again, what we would hate is for us just to focus on food, and then cause you to be more stressed out. Because I know for me personally, stress is one of I think more so than foods, is a bigger trigger for me than food has ever been. I can slip up and eat gluten and be fine. Can't eat too much of it. But a little bit of it and be fine. But because I've gotten to a state of calm in my body, like when I'm stressed and I'm up here, the lymph nodes in my neck swell. I cannot stay awake. The brain fog, the fatigue, it falls heavy on me. And what we don't want is for you to try to do AIP and become so stressed that it's counterproductive. So finding out what works for you and understanding it's a lot about mindset, and it's a journey. You're gonna always have chronic illness. It doesn't mean that your life is over. It means a new way of life. And for me, how I picture it, especially when I was diagnosed in my 30s, if I have more years ahead of me than I have behind me, how do I want those years to be? And even if it takes 2 years, even if it takes 3 years, I'm making progress slowly over time, short improvements or minimal improvements over time that will gradually add up, and I'll be at a better state than where I am currently. So for me, fighting for myself was worth it. Having that mindset shift was worth it, and finding a new purpose. I don't have the original goals that I had because it's not feasible with the current conditions, but I still have purpose, and I can still make an impact regardless of whether or not I have an autoimmune disease.
Mhm. I would definitely say you can make an impact with all the
Mhm.
things that you've described. You have a lot going on still.
Mhm.
So sounds like you still might be overdoing it, but for good
Man, I know that's a story for it. That's a whole different.
but for good reason.
That's part of what I mentioned earlier briefly about that the overwork being a trauma response, but that's a different that's a different podcast.
Yeah. So that said, do you have any upcoming projects that you'd like to share with the listeners?
One of the things that I have is an AIP retreat that I do with another coach in France, where I loved it when I went. It's an AIP coach. She's a functional nutritional therapist. She's also a chef. She's also an AIP coach. And for a week, we focus on the elimination phase of the AIP diet. You're in the countryside of France. You don't have any worries, any technology. I also mentioned that I'm a fitness instructor, so we focus on safe movement, and that mindset piece. And it's a teaching opportunity where you leave with tools to help you with your journey as you continue. So we have that. And then I also have my wait list for my group AIP program that I take people through, and I also take individual clients as well.
Awesome. Where can people find you if they have questions about any of this?
Sure. For my website in general, you can go to naturalhealing.coach, not .com, .coach. And I'm also on all social media at Heal Coach, HEALCOACH. And then for the retreat, it's called the Joyful Active AIP Restorative Retreat. You can go to joyfulactiveaip.com.
All right. I will get all of that in the show notes. And I think you sent me your social links as well. So I'll get those linked on there so people can find you if they have questions or want to follow you for more information. Any last things that you want to share with people before we wrap up for today?
Of course, you're worth it. I know the journey seems hard and it's going to be a roller coaster, no matter where you are in your journey. Because as we mentioned earlier, you can be diagnosed with one and then develop another, and then that's a whole new set of circumstances that you have to deal with. But if you just invest in yourself, advocate for yourself, listen to your body, and understand that there's a purpose regardless of what you're going through, then you'll be successful. Just keep fighting for yourself, advocating for yourself, and know that you are worth it, even on those hard days.
100% agree. Thank you so much, Jamie.
Mhm. Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Brain Wellness, the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, I encourage you to subscribe, like, and share this with others to help me continue on with my mission to help people live healthier, happier lives. Go to www.brainwellnesssolutions.com to see what I'm up to and get links to all the social medias there. See you next time.